So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
I think what bothers me about this is it seems like she was in the White House for her own personal gain, that she had a publicist working for her pro bono to lift up her profile. When you're in government service, you're not supposed to worry about your own personal profile.
I didn't think so either. That's a CNN reporter pointing that out. Biden world absorbs another body blow, even though it's from a lightweight KJP. Why I think it still keeps Dems off course and allows the GOP some open field running.
Number 2.
It creates economic growth, which if the Congressional Budget Office wasn't a bastion of idiotic left-wing thinking, by itself, the economic growth would virtually pay for the bill. You know, Musk probably ought to get a briefing on the real bill rather than his personality feelings.
That is true, Newt Gingrich. The BBB still moves ahead. Why I believe the turbulence with Musk will make the overall package better.
Number 1.
But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem.
Yep, he came back and said he didn't have a problem. The Musk-Trump goes from meltdown to truce, but how much damage was done personally and politically, we'll discuss. Look, it doesn't help that a guy who gives $288 million towards various causes, House races, Senate races, leaves your camp. But Elon Musk and Trump have been extremely tight. Now, Musk has been controversial. You know that. Every Democrat hates him. They're trying to blow up his cars, and I despise that. But when it came to the Doge, his idea, his suggestion during an interview he did on X with Trump, he said, listen, I'd love to do government efficiency. He got his team out there. He had a screaming match with Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary, went at it with Marco Rubio when it come to USAID, and then had a blistering fight with Scott Bessent, who basically yelled at him, you were supposed to save $2 trillion. It's $150 billion. What's going on here? And they since patched up. But with Trump, when he left and didn't get his NASA pick and then blew up the bill and then blew up Trump, Trump came back and then he hits him with, oh, he's on the Epstein list. And then a little bit later, they de-escalate. I've never seen anything like it from adults. And I can't really blame Trump. He was very calm. Judging by the social media postings, Musk wasn't. But the biggest story of consequence, and for my view, and I'm keeping my eye on this, got a bunch of balls in the air when it comes to Israel and Gaza, when it comes to Israel and Iran, when it comes to our nuclear talks with with Iran, which I have no patience for. I don't think they're going anywhere. And then when you have a political process taking all 12 weeks of President Trump's time and trying to get Ukraine and Russia to the table. I think Russia are the bad actors here. For some reason, a lot of Republicans are confused by this. I'm not. Andrew Weiss joins us now, Vice President of Studies at Carnegie for International Peace, served as a Russian expert in the Republican and Democratic administrations, including at the White House. Andrew, welcome.
Great to be here.
So I want you to hear what Donald Trump said yesterday after those, and I want to get your take on those incredibly innovative, resourceful attacks on Russia, inside Russia. Here's what Trump said, cut 43.
Sometimes, and this is me speaking maybe in a negative sense, but sometimes you see two young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other and they're fighting in a park. And you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart. And I gave that analogy to Putin yesterday. I said, President, maybe you're going to have to keep fighting and suffering a lot because both sides are suffering before you pull them apart, before they're able to be pulled apart.
Your thoughts about what President Trump's interpretation of what's next?
I think the president's correct that we have a long-term problem on our hands. This war is not going to end on an accelerated timetable. When the president came into office, obviously he was shooting to do a big diplomatic deal with the Russians and the Ukrainians in short order. And the kind of problem that he has on his hands is not lending itself to easy solutions. The administration set a timeline, 100 days, I think, was the realistic one. The president himself seems very reluctant to call time or to assign blame for why this diplomatic process didn't bear fruit. But there's really no pressure on the Russians. And the United States has a tremendous amount of leverage on the Ukrainians. We've seen the United States try to use that. But even there, the United States is not in a position to simply ram a deal down Ukraine's throats. Putin thinks he's winning. He doesn't want a timeout. He thinks he can continue to grind the Ukrainians down. And when he looks at the strategic landscape, he sees the U.S.-Ukraine relationship is in tatters. U.S. relations.
But do you think that's accurate to say it's in tatters? Do you think, I mean, it's been strained up and down, but I wouldn't say it's in tatters. You really think it is?
I think it's in tatters in the sense that the confidence that the Ukrainians have that the United States is going to stick with them has gone away. And I think you heard yesterday the president's special envoy, General Kellogg, say in an interview that he thinks that the supply of weapons and intelligence cooperation will continue even if the administration, quote, walks away, which is something they've been threatening to do in the past month or two. So there is, I think, a realization inside the administration that totally cutting off Ukraine would not be in the U.S. interest, that it's not in the U.S. interest to see Putin prevail in Ukraine. It's not in the U.S. interest to see, something that looks a lot like the fall of Kabul happen on their watch. So they're stuck. I don't think the administration has great options here. But the real challenge in any process like this is how to build leverage. How do you force the Russians to do something they don't want to do?
Well, what you do is see 117 drones launch within their country, within their borders. When you see trains derailed, bridges blow up, and planes destroyed, and they can't figure out how it happened. Those are the type of things I maybe think the Russians might want to recalculate. I hear it's paralyzed their country. They're looking at every truck and every driver as a possible Ukrainian.
Yeah, no, you put your finger on it, Brian. That they've stirred up a hornet's nest here. Ukraine was a largely benign neighboring country, and now by virtue of launching this unprovoked invasion, Russia has its own worst nightmare on its hands. It has a Ukraine that's going to be armed to the teeth and armed with intense sense of vendetta and need for revenge, and he's reinvigorated the NATO alliance. So these are all total blunders on this on an unthinkable scale for the Russians. The problem is Ukraine doesn't have the manpower, it doesn't have the sort of endless resources that Russia does by comparison. So if the Russians' goal here is simply keep the war going and exhaust the Ukrainians and sort of show that the West is being outmatched in terms of how quickly we get our defense industry back online, that's their theory of victory. And the United States needs to be doing things that show Putin that he's wrong about that.
And do you think right now they need Patriots, they need artillery? Are we capable of giving it to them?
That is a key question. So just to walk you through this, Ukraine has benefited from these very advanced air defense systems like the Patriots that the United States and other European countries are giving them. But there's a finite number of the interceptors, the rockets that are launched out of these anti-missile batteries. And the United States just doesn't make them at scale anymore. This is a system that, is sort of, in military terms, yesterday's news. And so our production lines are not churning this stuff out. And the Russians believe that if they just keep the war going, they can tap out Ukraine's available supply. That's the sort of fundamental wedge that the Russians are using, in that they believe they can restore dominance in Ukraine's skies and that the Ukrainians would then be forced to cut a deal with them. The West is scrambling to try to prove them wrong.
What I don't understand, and we're talking to Andrew Weiss, who's a Russian expert, what I don't get, Andrew, is this war's been going on for 3 years now, right? And we know the Israelis have been under attack since, for 3 years. We've had plenty of time to ramp up. Well, why are we not ramped up yet? We have now a bunch of customers called NATO who want to get their defense spending up to 5%. They want to buy from us. This is a for-profit operation.
Totally agree. And I think the previous administration was in a complicated spot. On the one hand, everyone saw that the United States didn't produce things like the Patriot missile interceptors we were just talking about. It didn't produce very basic forms of artillery that were, at this point in the U.S., part of like mom and pop operations or very small scale industrial, Eisenhower era production. So the problem for the previous administration was that the way they funded the war was in like 6-month, 8-month, or 3-month increments. There was no ability in Congress to force through big change like the Defense Production Act on the scale that Ukraine needed. So we were not ready to fight World War I, World War II, the Korean War all over again. We were planning on a different kind of war. And the politics of the U.S., I don't need to tell you, this are poisonous for some of these things. You know, the idea of big boosts in defense spending, big, possible benefits for the large U.S. defense contractors, all of that are, politically very divisive issues.
So I want you to hear what Germany was said yesterday, what their new chancellor said. I love his attitude, by the way, seemingly. Cut 45.
In the meantime, it's extremely complicated to bring the Russians to the table. That's the reason why I asked the president to do more on Russia and to put pressure on Russia. You know that there is a bill in the Senate drafted on more sanctions. Just had a debate, discussion with some colleagues from the Senate. So I very much hope that we will go along and that we will do the same. And the same has one goal: bring this terrible war to an end.
Right. And we become the natural gas supplier, which is another win for us. The pipelines are destroyed, linking them to an addiction to natural gas that they had with Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. So now we have two more formidable countries into NATO, which is impressive. And now we have just about all of them spending 2% and now going up to 5%. There's a lot of positives here. Now we got to do is take that $300 billion that we froze for Russia and then give it to the Ukrainians. Let them pay for this stuff. They'd be more than happy to do it and make the Russians understand that if you wait any longer, that $300 billion is gone. And give them a month or 2 weeks.
100%. That's a great game plan. I wish it were something that could be put in practice. Instead, we have, divisions that this administration is creating with the Europeans by threatening to pull out U.S. troops from Europe. So that's created a panic and a kind of bad dynamic with the Europeans because, the Germans, taking the most obvious example, are simply not in a position to replace the United States and provide the kind of security support that Ukraine desperately needs, let alone deter Russia from having designs on Europe in the future. The other problem the administration is creating is a sense from the Ukrainians that you're on your own and that, there's an equivalence between what Ukraine is suffering and what Russia is suffering. And you heard a bit of that yesterday in what the president said in the Oval Office, where he sort of compared this to a hockey match or two kids fighting it out in a park. The reality here is that Russia has launched an invasion, unprovoked invasion of a neighbor, and then, committed atrocities and, war crimes on a massive scale. Ukraine's defending itself. I think the U.S., has an obligation, given our history, given our values, to support the victim in this case. And the administration has instead, and the president as a candidate, has sort of portrayed this as a political issue and has used it as a thing to sort of beat Joe Biden up and to sort of say that there's two sides to every story. I think that's just fundamentally not the case.
I hear you. So inside Russia right now, some people have said he does not know how to stop the war. Not just Trump. Other people have said that. It's like, how does he get his economy flowing in a different way than militarily? I hear 45% of his GDP is weapons making.
That's not bad for Vladimir Putin, right? I mean, Vladimir Putin has the ability to recruit more than 30,000 people a month. They're paying them top dollar. So, the Russian available pool of manpower to fight in this war, even if they're being thrown into a meat grinder, is at the moment seemingly endless. There's lots of, economically dispossessed parts of Russia that now get contracts to churn out these, very rudimentary basic things, whether it's, boots and uniforms or artillery shells and bombs that, and bullets for the war effort, or Russia gets stuff from China, Iran, and North Korea. So, there is not a kind of pincer right now that Vladimir Putin is feeling that's going to change his calculus. And that's, again, that's what the administration has to focus on. Is like, how do you put pressure on this guy and get him off the path he's on? Nothing the administration is doing is shifting Putin's calculus. If anything, it's feeding his confidence.
It's amazing because, Andrew, after those attacks over the weekend and the blowing up the bridge for the third time that destabilized it at the very least, and now you have 1 million casualties, dead or wounded, off the battlefield. This is the biggest disaster ever. He bolstered NATO, made them more militant, and he lost Syria because he took his eye off the ball there, and Iran lost an outlet, and they lost a port eventually about to lose support, certainly an ally. So if you look at this is a disaster.
Oh, yeah. No, on all levels, it's a disaster. The question is it bad enough that something is going to, come unstuck? Like, he's not running for re-election. Russia's not a democracy. The average age of that group of people who've been killed or wounded on the battlefield is in their mid-30s. These are not people's kids who just finished high school. These are grown men who volunteered for the very healthy payouts. So, this is it's an ugly situation where
it's important.
Russians they're not running out of Russians, unfortunately, who are willing to go into the meat grinder.
Andrew, always like your perspective. Thanks so much. We'll see what happens next. I just hope Trump goes, yep, Senate sanctions are in. Nothing I could do, Vladimir. Goodbye. That would be great. I appreciate it. Andrew Weiss.
From your lips to God's ears, Brian. Thanks so much.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have we want to be able to sell everything.
So that is President Trump trying to figure out and explain what Elon Musk could have been doing in trying to leave the White House and then blow the place up as he left, saying the bill is going to add so much to the deficit and it goes against Doge. And then I talked to Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, and he said it really has to do with the NASA guy. He had only given to Trump after he was clearly going to win. And he also gave a lot to Democrats prior, and he made a lot of people uncomfortable. I actually don't think it matters if NASA guy is a Democrat or Republican, but that ticked off Elon Musk, Senator Mullen said, and that led to this meltdown. Also, the EV mandate is gone. That's what the president speculated on. But then it got really personal. Carley Shimkus joins us now, co-host of Fox and Friends First. Carley.
Hey.
So what do you think derailed it?
I was just listening to you give that explanation of the NASA guy, and then there's also been reporting that it could have been, Starlink being used in various ways, and the EV mandate, and these are all relatively insignificant things when it comes to how closely they work together and potentially what they could have done in the future. Don't you think that he could have just called Trump and been like, hey, listen, I mean, this is my guy. I really would appreciate if he becomes the NASA administrator, talked about it like a civil person. I am shocked by this escalation. And quite frankly, I think that what happened yesterday makes Trump look like a sympathetic figure.
In what way?
Because, Elon Musk was just going nuts. I mean, talking about impeachment and working with J.D. Vance and calling for a third party. And Trump was just responding, and I think genuinely shocked at what was coming at him. So politically, I mean, I think that, all of what Donald Trump's personality is baked in. He's not running again. But I think that if he wants to potentially win this news cycle in any way, I don't even know if it's really about winning a news cycle. I hate that phrase. I don't know why I just said it. But it just, in terms of seizing the moment, I mean, just say, yeah, I still have no idea what happened there. This is about, we're going to press forward with the big, beautiful bill. That seems like a lot of noise. He's got a lot going on. I could have won on my own. I mean, that's not true. Donald Trump didn't need Elon Musk to win. Look at who the opponent was. It was Kamala Harris. Come on.
And plus, he was badly outspent by Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
he always is.
But I think just treat it like the noise that it is coming from Elon. And hopefully one day, I don't know if today would be the day for the phone call to happen. Apparently it's not going to. Maybe in a month from now. And then they could maybe talk it out after cooler heads have prevailed. But so far, I feel like Donald Trump has been, relatively mild when it comes to the attacks that Elon Musk had been throwing at him.
So the last time Elon Musk posted was 43 minutes ago. And he says, congratulations to Tesla Berlin team. Evidently, they put out their 8 millionth vehicle. As you know, Tesla yesterday was down 18% because of this meltdown, because of it. He also said, hey, SpaceX, I'm going to just sideline my space capsule. Then he realized it's probably not a good move.
By somebody on Twitter who said maybe you shouldn't do that. And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, let's workshop this in real time.
And the thing is, Amazon would step up. No one can beat SpaceX. I get it. and Starlink, I understand it. But people would step up in the interim, and plus you could take a lot of the technology that the government financed and use it towards other people in private finance. So nothing, 21 hours, 23 hours. I mean, this is 17 hours. He retweeted something Jesse put on his show. So there's really not a lot going on between them today.
Yeah, thankfully.
So we'll see. We'll see where it stands. I thought John Fetterman nailed it yesterday, saying, really? Now Democrats are embracing Elon Musk? Cut 12.
Are Democrats disingenuous, suddenly finding Elon Musk as their new best friend?
Well, I'm saying, all I'm saying, though, it's like he's right about the big, beautiful bill. And now suddenly, it wasn't that long ago that Tesla's was like the virtue signaling kind of accessory for Dems as well, too. So now where we are on all this kind of a thing now, where I follow what is the truth. I would never want to vandalize Teslas. And now the big, beautiful bill is wrong for America. And so from my perspective, it's like I just try to be consistent through that.
He is being consistent, but I totally agree with him on it being wrong for America. There's so much there more positive. And I just think there's very few people are reading the 1,000 pages.
Yeah, I know. And when it comes to the bill, it's so funny. How many clips have we gotten this week of Democrats from Chuck Schumer on down saying, I actually agree with Elon Musk. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually do.
For the wrong reason.
Very different reasons. I mean, they want to expand government spending and Elon Musk wants to cut it.
Right.
And also when it comes to the burning of the Teslas, listen, there are a lot of Republicans out there. I mean, I guess people, I don't know if people are choosing sides. Maybe they are a little bit, but I highly doubt we're going to see the burning of Teslas if Elon Musk and Donald Trump ever.
From by Republicans.
Yeah, ever really do.
But by the way, Republicans go, I didn't want an electric car anyway. I was doing it out of loyalty because of the abuse he's taken. Now they'll walk away from it. Alicia Krause is a conservative journalist. She said this to Trace Gallagher last night, cut 22.
Musk has made a drastic shift to the right within the last 4 years. I think that this also serves as fair warning for conservatives of just because somebody says or does one thing that you like or they support your guy for a little while doesn't mean that at the core they are morally conservative, and maybe we need to take pause and consider that in the future.
Good point.
That's interesting. Although Elon Musk would disagree with that because he said on X, when he talked about forming the third party, he said, how about I form a third party of a moderate party that 80% of the country agree with? I don't know. Maybe he is still a moderate at his core. I don't know. Brian, how crazy is this? It just blew up out of nowhere.
Yeah, I didn't expect
there were so many positive things going on, and there still are. And, before this took place, everybody was talking about Joe Biden and Corinne Jean-Pierre's book. And
yeah. Maybe we should do that. But I just want to before we go, so what they did is they got the cameras. They tried to get as many lawmakers as possible. Here's Derek Van Orden, Wisconsin, Troy Nail of Texas, Nails, and Mike Johnson, the speaker, cut 17.
You were very concerned about tweets, but I think the American people are concerned about things that really matter.
Elon, I've had a lot of love and respect for you for what you've done for this country over the last several months, but you've lost your damn mind.
He's not a member of Congress. Listen, anybody who's going to be intimidated by somebody politically whose last name isn't Trump is barking up the wrong tree.
That is Derek Van Orden, Navy SEAL. He's 100% right.
He really is. And the start of this feud was over the bill. And Donald Trump even said, listen, this isn't it's not, I don't love everything in it. I mean, this is a massive bill. There's such a slim majority in the House. Politics is the art of compromise. It's not going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're working with. And it's certainly better to have the tax cuts and the border security and all of the good things in the bill than allowing those tax cuts to lapse and then look what happened to the economy then.
So you look at KJP and she comes out with a book. The subtitle says Broken White House, Independent. She's leaving the party. The party hates her. And they all let it all hang out, although they don't have the courage to put their name on it. But the stuff that they're saying about her, now that she's come out and said the party basically isn't worthy of her, is just crazy. I mean, here's an example of, here we go. Why did I have these tabs and it didn't go? Here we go. You're going to be really impressed when I actually get this. So this is what they're saying about KJP. Says he's written a book about a broken White House, which she says she sees as a betrayal of the former president, many of her former colleagues. The face of the White House for more than 2 years was part of the problem. that she says this. This is anonymous, of course. She was one of the most ineffectual, unprepared people I've ever worked with, according to somebody she worked with every day. She didn't know how to manage a team. She didn't know how to shape a delivery. She often created more problems than she solved. The hubris thinking you can position yourself as an outsider when you've enjoyed all the perks of being an insider.
Yikes.
And it goes on and on and on. So are people going to buy this book?
I mean, that's brutal. I guess a small portion. I don't know how much, what kind of, maybe for intrigue reasons, if you are political, maybe even on the right, just to see.
You have to,
just to
almost.
see what. I don't know if the people on the left would even want to, because it just reminds them of what a train wreck things are right now. Right? I mean, I don't know what her calculus was in making this book and declaring this in this way after the disaster that is the Biden presidency. And I don't know what it is about Democrats writing books that are such indictments on their careers. You have, the Jake Tapper book that is basically like, I screwed up. In covering this. That's
and
what
it's
the book
even
should have
worse
been
than the Republicans
called.
said it was.
Yes. And now KJP doing this to herself.
Right. I mean, it's incredible. And the Republicans go, okay, I'll just keep working because I'm not negotiating with you on the big, beautiful bill. We're not negotiating on foreign policy. So what are we working on? I mean, after this bill is passed, which I think I think they'll get a Senate version by July 4th, unless Elon Musk does something else unpredictable and that it gets some traction. And then once this passes, I think that you're going to be looking at immigration reform, Social Security reform. I think you'd be looking at Medicare reform, and you could see who could play ball and who doesn't want to.
Exactly.
The entitlements will be front and center.
Yeah. And then there's still the foreign policy stuff that Trump is working on. Gaza, Israel, all of those things that are still going on. So there could be a lot of news made past this moment.
So just remember what KJP said about President Biden's acuity.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
How is President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you, sir. I mean, look, that was, as I said, it was a cheap, a cheap fake. That was definitely a cheap fake. It was.
Here's what Alex Thompson said about the cheap fake line.
So when we were reporting the book, I remember talking to a fairly senior White House person, and they basically admitted, like, yes, he was bad. Yes, we shouldn't have run him again. Yes, like, he was really struggling. But they sort of got in my face. They were like, you guys bought some of our spin. And they specifically mentioned the cheap fake stuff. They were like, this person was like, we could not, at least they were speaking for themselves. They were like, I could not believe we got those stories placed.
Oh, what? They were even surprised at their success. Why? Because the media was just lapping it up. Okay, they're going to give it to us, then we're going to print it. I mean, how many articles were there written where the headline was talking about how bad deep fakes have gotten, deep fake videos have gotten, and it's even plaguing the president? Come on. And we all saw it before our eyes. It was happening in real time.
I mean, I feel bad for Peter, and I don't feel bad, but Peter's head must be spinning because every question he asked, he was told it was illegitimate, we're right on the money.
I know.
And then everything that we discussed, we were told that's right-wing propaganda. It was 100% true. And now that they are making money off verifying what we said and that they ignored.
I know.
Without acknowledging that we had it right. I know that Jake Tapper at one point told Megyn Kelly conservative media had it right. I wouldn't say we're even conservative media. We're just media. And the other thing would be, it's like this. I do great at analogies, so I just want to warn you.
Okay, good.
It's like being caught cheating in a relationship and then saying, I can't believe you let me get away with it for so long. It's your fault. Right?
And I'm there.
Like, I dare you.
Yes,
You bought my dumb excuses.
This is
it's
really
your
on
fault.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The mental gymnastics. It's so true. And then did you catch Karine Jean-Pierre when she was exasperated by, is Joe Biden too old to run again? And then now we're learning from these anonymous sources, no one is saying who their name is, that she would be incensed when somebody asked her a question that a producer didn't tell her the topic in advance. I mean, she's the White House press secretary, which means that she needs to be, it's a very difficult job, but you need to be well-versed on every topic. And just by the nature of your job, you are.
Right, but here's the thing. Do you realize that she's saying to you that I got a heads up on all my White House questions ahead of time?
Yeah, that's also
I mean, that's
true.
what she's saying.
Yeah.
We know Joe Biden got it. It was written out along with your answers.
I know.
Along with the answers.
Yeah. I mean, for somebody like the White House press secretary, you need not do that with her. I mean, his whole job is centered around speaking to the president and members of the cabinet and figuring out, okay, how am I going to, I know I'm going to get asked this. I may get asked this. I don't know if this is going to come up, but if it does, how do I respond?
So look at Sarah Huckabee Sanders, for example. The biggest challenge with her, Sean Spicer, and others would be, how do I answer in a way the president wants me to? But you never had to tell them what the subject is.
Yeah.
What are the problems with Social Security? What are the problems with immigration reform? What's the problem with the wall, the financing, the budget? You say to yourself, I know, but what does my boss want me to
hear?
say?
Yep. She's the voice of the president, so that's the job.
Right. And she's probably in on the brief. Like Jen Psaki reminds me of someone in on the briefings. So she got without Joe Biden there. So like she's like, oh, let me just tell you this, and let me tell you the weakness of my argument. And so so that's what we're used to.
I know.
And what I'm trying to verify, and I know you agree with me, is it doesn't matter what party it is. When you go to a press secretary, you know it's their job, but they have to give you something you can work with. She gave you nothing. The only thing I used on this show were questions because I wouldn't get the answer.
And it would just be a lot of,
Just
I've been very
questions.
clear.
Yeah.
She used that line a lot. We've been very clear. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe she felt like she had no future recourse. I know that she wanted to do The View. There was reporting there.
Yeah,
Did you read that? Yeah. I know. And it just didn't work out for her. And given the position that she held, and I mean, she looks great on camera, you would think that maybe, but because of the weakness in terms of her delivery, it just never amounted into anything. So now she's writing this book.
We are increasing Medicaid spending. I'll give you a number. We project $200 billion of more money being spent on Medicaid. We already have a healthcare system that spends twice as much on individuals as any other system in the world. So the problem isn't money. The issue is the increased expenditures on Medicaid, which is 50% bigger than it was 5 years ago before the pandemic, is crippling the system. We are hurting Medicaid. The president said, and is very clear on this, he wants to love and cherish these programs. Our job is to save this system.
Yeah, that is Dr. Oz, who's trying to save Medicaid and Medicare. Now they're talking about some type of reform when it comes to Medicare, which was not going to be touched originally. Meanwhile, working away is his colleague, Dr. Marty Makary, great guest of the show, former Fox News contributor, now FDA commissioner. Dr. Makary, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Brian. Thanks.
What has been your focus from day one? I notice you're not looking to color in the lines. You're looking to push the envelope and move this division forward. In what way?
Well, my goal is very simple. I wanted to see more cures and meaningful treatments delivered for the American people and healthier food for children, because we've got a disease epidemic and we can't just talk about insulin and Ozempic for kids. We've got to talk about school lunch programs and the SNAP program and all the chemicals that appear in our food supply. We also have to cut the red tape for our developers and inventors. The new therapies that are in the pipeline, Brian, are amazing. One of the cool things about being head of the FDA is I get to see the stuff that's in development. And it is amazing. Treatments for stage 4 cancers of certain types, childhood blindness, diabetes. So I want to see these cures come to market. And to do that, we have to insist on the scientific standards. We can't cut corners on that. But we have to ask big questions we've never asked before. Why does it take 10 years for a drug to come to market in the United States? Mm-hmm. We've got to challenge some deeply held assumptions.
So what program is going to push that? There's a name for a new program you have? If I have a medicine, then I want a stage 4 cancer, I need it, it's still being developed, what can we do?
So we want to build on the successes of the accelerated review program, the priority review program, and we want to, right now we're doing this incredible analysis of how we can just cut the red tape, cut the steps be in better communication with the developers of these drugs so they don't have to wait 2 months just to get a letter returned with a simple question. So we're looking at running continuous trials. We're looking at reducing animal testing. We made a big announcement on how we don't need animal testing for certain drugs now. We've got computational modeling. We've got laboratory cells that you can test drugs on that are more predictive sometimes. And some of these drugs are approved in Europe, and they've been on the market, and yet the FDA has still been requiring animal testing on these drugs. So it's like we're not using common sense, and one of our big themes is gold standard science and common sense.
Absolutely. Dr. Makary, I saw that RFK Jr. came out as HHS secretary and says if medical schools don't start including nutrition, you're going to lose funding. When it comes to nutrition, you're focusing on baby formula. Remember, we had a crisis of baby formula when Joe Biden first took over. We couldn't get it. But you're looking at what's in it. You said it has not been modernized, really looked at since the 80s?
Since 1998. So for 26 years, we've had essentially no changes to the baby formula world because we have this crazy system where the FDA creates a recipe. I mean, basically, think about this. The government is telling you this is the recipe for baby formula, and they haven't touched it in 26 years with the exception of adding selenium once. So we've had very little innovation. And so what happens is you get these supply chains that are dependent on certain companies mass producing it. And what you don't have is competition, right? So we want to see more products come to market. Moms want baby formula with no seed oil. They want baby formula with no corn syrup. They want baby formula with no heavy metals. So we had a giant roundtable at the FDA 3 days ago where we brought in experts from around the world to talk about how we innovate and change this entire space so we can see more innovation and more products come to market.
And did something come out of it? And do you find that people are intrigued by your interest in everything going forward rather than going along?
Well, there are some folks at the FDA that say, wait a minute, this is how we've been doing it for decades, or the FDA commissioners never involved in these product-related matters. And, historically, this is not how we've done it. Well, it's a new day at the FDA. We have got to modernize the agency. We implemented AI-assisted scientific reviews this week across the agency. Over 5,000 scientific reviewers and other staff at the agency are using our AI-assisted review tools to be able to go through these giant applications faster. And we're just doing a lot of common sense stuff, Brian, and my hope is that it delivers more meaningful treatments and cures for Americans.
Absolutely. So, one thing I was struck by, and we were texting, I texted you, I just could not believe the hostility your direction on Face the Nation, especially when something is logical. Should you be getting COVID shot for kids? And I don't think they were prepared, but Margaret Brennan or anybody is prepared for the depth of knowledge that people on our channel, not just doctors on our channel, were forced to go deep on the pandemic. And people were questioning nonstop. On the other channels, it was just tell me what to do. It wasn't happening on Fox. Listen to this exchange. Well, let's relive this exchange with you and Margaret Brennan on vaccines in kids. Cut 66.
For 88% of American kids, their parents have said no to the COVID shot last season. So the vast majority of Americans are saying no. Maybe they want to see some clinical data as well. Maybe they have concerns about the safety.
I don't want to crowdsource my health guidance. I want a clear thing, right? You don't go with popularity. You go with, as you're saying, data. And when we looked
so
at
let's see the data.
Okay, so the CDC data said 41% of children aged 6 months to 17 years hospitalized with COVID between 2022 and 2024 did not have a known underlying condition. In other words, they looked healthy. And COVID was serious for them.
So, first of all, we know the CDC data is contaminated with a lot of false positives from incidental positive COVID tests with routine testing of every kid that walks in the hospital. When I go to the ICU, when I walk to we know that data historically under the Biden administration did not distinguish being sick from COVID or an incidental positive COVID test. When you go to an ICU in America and you ask how many people are in the ICU that are healthy, that are sick with COVID, The answer I get again and again is we haven't seen that in a year or years.
So, Paul, so Dr. Makary, this is what we're talking about. You have these people hopping on television talking about all these kids in ICUs, and we're saying, who are these kids? They don't have underlying conditions. So where does the rubber hit the road on this conversation? What struck you most?
Well, look, I think you saw the fear machine in full force right there. Americans, the COVID emergency is over. 85% of healthcare workers said no to the COVID shot last year. Healthcare workers, Brian.
But she doesn't want to crowdsource her health. She doesn't want to crowdsource her health, Dr. Makary.
Well, I mean, what happened to listening to the scientists, right? That 85% of healthcare workers said no to the COVID booster last shot. Yeah. We wrote in the New England Journal of Medicine, the head of the vaccine center and myself wrote in the New England Journal of Medicine, our top journal, an evidence-based approach for vaccines for COVID vaccines. And we're just saying, look, it's been 4 years since a randomized controlled trial. If vaccines come to us for COVID at the FDA, we want to see a clinical trial showing a benefit. And in the meantime, we're not taking away vaccines for high-risk people or immunosuppressed folks where their doctor thinks it is reasonable. But we're getting back to science. We're not putting a blindfold on at the FDA and rubber stamping COVID shots every year without any clinical updated trial data. And so that's our approach. The government is not your doctor. And I think that's where some people want the government to be your doctor. But when the government is your doctor, it doesn't have a very good track record.
So what was your sense when you were sitting across from her? She looked so angry at you.
Well, they're all God's children, Brian. You know, I feel bad for folks that have just they're so deep in the Fauci camp that they can't possibly imagine a world where a young baby girl born today does not get 80 shots in her average 80-year lifespan. You know, people are they've bought this blind strategy. There's two thoughts with the COVID booster. The blind camp, which is we don't need any clinical trial data for young, healthy kids. Just blindly give it to them every year without data. And the other camp, which is my camp, which is the evidence-based strategy that we outlined in the New England Journal of Medicine.
Here's the other argument. Of course, pregnant women shouldn't get COVID shots in 2025, but that doesn't resonate with her. Cut 67.
You published in the New England Journal of Medicine on May 20th, in that report you referenced, you listed pregnancy as an underlying medical condition that increases a person's risk for severe COVID. You said that. So then 7 days later, you joined in this video announcement saying you should drop the recommendation for the COVID vaccine in healthy pregnant women. So what changed in the 7 days?
In the New England Journal of Medicine, we simply list what the CDC has traditionally defined as high risk, and we're just saying decide with your doctor. We're not saying one way or the other. And the randomized
data
trial,
and information as well from you and your.
So here's the data on pregnant women. A randomized controlled trial was set up, and it was closed without any explanation. We wanted to see that trial complete so women can have information that in a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard, this is what the data shows. We don't have those data.
All right. It is still unclear what pregnant women now should do until they get the data that
I'd say talk to their doctor.
When do they get the data you're promising? All these controlled studies.
In the absence of data, they should talk to their doctor, and their doctor will use their best wisdom and judgment.
FDA Commissioner, thank you for trying to help clear this up.
I mean, absolutely despicable. Number one is you've been there 3 months. The study was stopped. So you're saying, well, I'm not going to come out with a conclusion on a study that wasn't completed. She's like, well, where's your study? It's June 1st.
I forgot about that exchange, Brian. I've been in the job about 9 weeks here as FDA Commissioner. We put out an article, and they go through it with a fine-tooth comb looking for anything. And meanwhile, in the Biden administration, it didn't matter if the medical establishment ignored natural immunity, closed schools for a year and a half, masked toddlers, vaccine mandates, or you lose your job. None of that got scrutiny or another point of view. But if we write an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, our top medical journal, and we include a list of risk factors from the CDC, she goes through and says, well, hey, you've got pregnancy listed as a risk factor, and gotcha. I'm saying It's up to you and your doctor. 13% of pregnant women got the COVID shot last year. What does that tell you? They don't want it.
Of course, but you don't want to crowdsource your information. Dr. Makary, it's the reality that's hitting Washington, and watching it in real time is so fascinating to me because you can't outthink you or out-resource you. You've been through it. You do this every day. You don't just put on a lab coat and say, I have an idea, let me just create some legislation. You're out there trying to figure it out while moving everything forward. And that seems to bother people.
They're really just, it's a sad commentary of how polarized our country became with this sort of absolutism of the public health establishment insisting you leave the military if you didn't have your COVID second shot, that you stop being a teacher, that you get fired as a firefighter. It became so toxic. And we're saying, look, we're not telling everyone you must get a COVID shot. Every 12-year-old girl in America must get her sixth shot. We're not saying that. And we're not saying the shots are going to be taken off the market. We're just taking an evidence-based approach in the middle, and we're saying talk to your doctor, and people go bananas on both sides sometimes.
And I just love the emphasis everywhere with RFK's team on nutrition, because it was like, go to a nutritionist or go to a doctor. Can you imagine if you can go to one? And they both had equal passion for what we eat and how your body responds. And then preventive medicine, stem cells, which is coming our way. I'm fascinated by what could happen with you guys in charge. Dr. Marty Makary, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be with you.
Yeah, you really appreciate it here, even if you're not there.